announced our plan to double our non-U.S. exports over the course of the next decade. That's more than $300 billion in new trade.
Our relationship with the United States will never again be the same as it was.
The United States of America, our largest trading partner, north and south. They're our most trusted and important ally as Canadians and as fellow North Americans. And so our goal isn't to sell those products somewhere else. Our goal is to continue with the relationship with the United States.
Canada just erupted because Mark Carney pulled the kind of $300 billion anti-U.S. gamble that shakes a nation to its core. And honestly, with one stroke, he didn't just distance Canada from America, he blew a hole straight through the economic model this country has lived under for generations. And now the country is split in half. The markets are on edge, Washington is furious, and Carney is standing there acting like he just saved the future, while everyone else is wondering if he's detonated it.
I chose this summit and this visit to Malaysia as my first trip as Prime Minister to Asia for a reason. And that is, like ASEAN, Canada values sustainability and inclusivity.
Look, we need to stop pretending this was some harmless trade plan. Carney didn't just announce diversification. He swung a sledgehammer at the single relationship that built half of Canada's economy. When he stood on that stage in Kuala Lumpur and dropped the bomb, $300 billion of Canadian trade redirected away from the United States. It wasn't a policy rollout. It was a geopolitical punch in the mouth. You could feel the shockwave rip straight through the country. Ontario's auto belt went dead quiet. Alberta's energy sector grabbed the calculator like someone had just killed the power. And every border town felt their stomach drop because they know exactly what happens when you mess with the American lifeline.
We value a rules-based system. We respect trade agreements and the rule of law. We value the free exchange of goods, capital, and ideas. We're a natural partner.
And Carney? He looked calm, like a man who just burned the old map and is convinced he can draw a new one before the flames touch him. That's why Canada erupted, not because the plan was big, but because he acted like dropping a $300 billion anti-U.S. bomb was the most normal thing in the world. This wasn't a strategy. This was a rupture. And everyone watching felt the floor tilt under their feet.
We don't know the new system that's going to emerge. This is more of a rupture than a transition. It's a shift that's happening in a short period of time.
What happened in Kuala Lumpur was absolutely explosive. Carney walks into the ASEAN summit expecting diplomatic small talk, and instead, the entire hall stands up for him like he just rewrote the rules of the Pacific. Cameras flash, leaders clap, and suddenly Canada, zero, the quiet neighbor, the middle power wallflower, Indonesia, is being treated like the new strategic prize in Asia's fastest growing market.
It makes ASEAN more important than ever. And it underscores the importance of reliable partners who honor their commitments, who are there in tough times, and when things are not working, who work collaboratively to fix them. And again, I want to commend you, Chair, and in brokering the peace agreement that was announced this morning.
But the spark that set Canada off was simple. That applause wasn't just clapping. It was a signal flare. Asia wasn't cheering Carney because they liked his speech. They were cheering because they saw Canada drifting away from the United States. They saw Carney as the reliable partner Washington no longer is. And while Kuala Lumpur erupted in praise, Ottawa erupted in fear, because everyone knew that kind of standing ovation comes with a price, sake, and the bill always lands on Canadian workers first.
Colleagues, I would like to just underscore that Canada can be and is such a partner. Let me give an example. A few days ago, I announced our plan to double our non-U.S. exports over the course of the next decade. That's more than $300 billion in new trade, much of which we hope will be with this group.
Then Carney crossed a line no Canadian leader has ever touched. He straight up said the quiet part out loud. America is no longer reliable. For a country that sends 3/4 of its exports to the U.S., that's not a comment. That's a detonation. You could almost hear Washington choke on it. And at home, every industry tied to U.S. buyers felt the ground shift. Premiers started barking on TV about economic betrayal. Business leaders warned of investment flight. Border communities asked one question nobody wants to answer. What happens if the U.S. decides to punish us? But Carney didn't blink. He tore off the bandage and exposed the wound. Canada has been living on borrowed stability, and he just told the world we're done pretending otherwise.
Don't want to go to the U.S. now because of your 51st state talk, because of the trade war, the tariffs.
Yeah,
and
well,
fear
I
of
understand
local
it. Look, I understand
export.
that. It's something that will get worked out.
Let's be brutally honest. Carney didn't make this move in a vacuum. Trump practically gift-wrapped the justification. Every time he slapped another tariff on Canadian steel, aluminum, autos, or lumber, he wasn't flexing power. He was shoving Canada straight into Asia's arms. And when he threatened another 10% round, that was the moment Canadian executives stopped whispering and started sprinting for alternatives. Trump's tariffs were supposed to box Canada in, but according to the Peterson Institute and Global Affairs data, they did the opposite, pushing investment out of the U.S., driving Canadian exports to Asia past $261 billion, and giving Mark Carney the perfect opening for his $300 billion anti-U.S. pivot. And the whole thing went from tense to surreal during the Oval Office moment. Trump tried to project strength, but instead spiraled into off-topic rants about steel, cars, border crime, drug boats, and imaginary $17 trillion in investment, while Carney calmly delivered hard numbers and let Trump's chaos undermine itself.
We're re-engaging with global giants India and China while we deepen our partnerships with our traditional allies. And to build on this momentum, I'm going to put it in context. Our goal for Canada is to double our non-U.S. exports over the course of the next decade, generating more than $300 billion.
And then the strangest moment of all, Trump calling Carney a great man, a strong leader, and when asked why there's no deal yet, blurting out, "Because I want to be great too." That wasn't diplomacy. That was insecurity laid bare. And for Canadians watching at home, it was the first time they saw, in broad daylight, exactly why Carney no longer wants Canada chained to a leader who can torpedo policy with a single confused sentence. Asia saw something Washington didn't, a Canada that finally stopped waiting for permission. When Carney arrived in Kuala Lumpur, ASEAN leaders didn't treat him like a polite guest. They treated him like a missing piece of their strategic puzzle. It was Asia saying, "If America won't treat you right, we will."
I think he's a great prime minister. I mean, he could represent me anytime. I will tell you, I'm not saying that because he's... No, he is a very strong, very good leader. He's a nice man, but he could be nasty.
ASEAN leaders didn't stand up for nothing. They stood because Canada finally showed up, offering what the region actually needs: clean energy, critical minerals, stability, and a partner that isn't ruled by one man's mood swings or surprise tariffs. And the truth Ottawa won't say out loud: Asia wasn't applauding Carney's speech. They were applauding Canada's signal that it's ready to step out of America's shadow and into Asia's orbit.
Canada should be a 51st state. Canada's a very bad abuser.
Canada's been ripping us off for a long time.
Without the U.S., Canada really doesn't have a country.
Carney didn't walk into Asia empty-handed. Deze Houder named de Quartes, he arrived with a four-pillar economic weapon that could rewrite Canada's future. The problem? Every one of these pillars pulls us further away from the United States. And that's exactly why the country is on edge. First is LNG, the backbone of his Asia play, shouts 50 million tons a year by 2030, almost all of it heading east. That's not diversification. That's Canada telling the U.S. their energy dominance in our economy is officially over. Alberta cheered at first, then realized what it really means: new customers, new pipelines, new risks, and a new dependence on Asia's appetite.
We're an energy superpower in both clean and conventional. We expect within the next 5 years to produce and export 50 million tons of LNG every year to Asia, and to double that within 10 years from then.
Then critical minerals: lithium, nickel, cobalt, rare earths. The ingredients of every battery, every EV, every clean tech factory on the planet. Carney launched a critical minerals alliance with Asia to bypass U.S. processing entirely. Ottawa calls it strategy. Washington calls it betrayal.
Is to work with you on financing and developing that, including through what we formed a critical mineral alliance, which can provide a secure buyer for these resources so that you can develop them over time. In other words, to be part of the solution.
And is clean power, Canada's 85% clean grid, expanding with nuclear microreactors and renewables. Asia wants it. Carney wants to sell it. But Canadians know this also means massive infrastructure shifts and billions in public investment, while U.S. buyers get pushed further to the sidelines. And then comes the nuclear one, armor, tech, and defense. Carney is quadrupling spending in AI, cybersecurity, drones, and advanced manufacturing. Not with the U.S. as the primary partner, but with Asia as the new anchor. For a country built on NORAD and continental defense, that is a tectonic shift. So yes, Carney has a plan, but it's a plan that drags Canada out of the U.S. orbit and plants us in a new geopolitical universe, whether the country is ready or not.
We have domestically an electricity grid that is 85% clean. We will expand that by 50% over the next decade, including with new forms of nuclear power, small modular reactors. We're one of the largest, blessed with one of the largest resources of critical minerals and rare earths.
Carney's Asia pivot didn't just open new markets. It unleashed a wave of global capital that's now bypassing the United States entirely. The Financial Times, calling Canada the Pacific Gateway for Western capital, sent Washington into panic, and for good reason. Asian demand for Canadian LNG, minerals, clean tech, and AI hasn't risen. It's exploded, triggering billions in investment into Canadian ports, mines, and tech hubs. And the result is the unthinkable. The TSX's Resource Tech Index is now outperforming the S&P 500. Canada is suddenly beating America in sectors the U.S. thought it owned.
With respect to defense, AI, cyber, just to give context, we are quadrupling our spending on defense in the next 5 years. Much of that will be in the realms of cyber security, artificial intelligence, and the interactions. This is an area where our cooperation is ideal.
The twist is that Canada's Asia pivot isn't just a win, it's a warning. The moment Canada becomes Asia's gateway, it stops being America's backyard, and U.S. executives are panicking as capital, supply chains, and resources start shifting east instead of south. Carney didn't just diversify the economy, he moved Canada into a new global position, proving we now have options that pay better than anything Washington offers. And with $2.3 billion already fueling the Indo-Pacific push, Canada isn't experimenting. It's rewiring its entire economy toward Asia and away from the United States.
President Bravo, thank you. We concluded a historic trade agreement, our first bilateral free trade agreement with an ASEAN partner, with speed and with ambition.
Every dollar of that fund builds something permanent. A trade gateway in Southeast Asia, new export hubs, green energy links, digital corridors, security tech. These aren't temporary bridges. They're anchors. Once they're built, Canada is tied into Asia's growth, whether Washington likes it or not. And Asia sees exactly what Carney is doing. When Canada rolls out satellite programs like dark vessel detection to help the Philippines track illegal ships. That's not charity, that's influence. It's Canada stepping into roles the U.S. used to dominate and proving it can deliver stability without chaos or threats.
Absolutely. Really disappointing news, especially for the Canadian steel and aluminum industry in particular, who are really counting on some form of short-term relief. I know we were not going to get to a broad-scale deal with the United States that had been signaled quite clearly from the Prime Minister.
The truth is brutal but simple. This wasn't Canada exploring options. This was Canada building the escape hatch. Carney didn't just talk about reducing dependence on America. He funded the machinery that makes it irreversible. And that's why the country is erupting. He didn't simply pivot. He invested in a future where the U.S. is no longer the center of our world. The numbers hit harder than any speech. Canada's trade with ASEAN has almost doubled, blasting past $42 billion. While U.S.-Canada trade, once unstoppable, has stalled out and started slipping. Asia is accelerating. America is idling.
To the Canadian steel and aluminum industry and frankly to the Canadian economy quite broadly, right? I mean, we're seeing really a wave of incoming, like a layoff tsunami in many sectors.
Malaysia, Vietnam, Singapore, Indonesia, all surging as Canadian partners. Not gradually, aggressively. It's the kind of shift economists usually warn about years in advance, yet it happened right under Washington's nose. Canada isn't easing into Asia. It's being pulled into a faster, bigger, hungrier market. Meanwhile, the U.S. link, the backbone of Canada's economy, is stuck at $760 billion with no momentum left. For the first time in decades, the American market isn't the future. It's the plateau. Carney didn't force this change. The data made the decision for him. Asia is opening doors. America is closing them. And Canada has no choice but to walk toward the only direction where growth is still happening.
Leaving him no choice but to announce all trade negotiations with Canada are hereby terminated.
The second Carney's 300B anti-U.S. pivot hit the airwaves. Canada didn't react. It blew up. Ontario's auto belt froze. Alberta turned on itself. Premiers accused Carney of gambling with jobs and provoking the one country Canada can't afford to anger. Border towns panicked because they know what happens when the U.S. decides to squeeze. And Washington snapped. Trump's team called it a defection. U.S. executives warned their supply chains were being ripped out from under them. Congress demanded hearings. For the first time in decades, America realized Canada wasn't following It was walking away. Trump threatened more tariffs, more punishment, more chaos. Carney didn't flinch.
ASEAN summit in Kuala Lumpur, Malaysia, Prime Minister Mark Carney just delivered a wide-ranging speech positioning Canada as a values-driven, reliable partner to Southeast Asia.
Canadians suddenly realized Carney isn't tweaking the old system. He's replacing it outright. 50 years of U.S. dependence disappeared in one pivot, and now Canada is acting like a true middle power with its own alliances, markets, and identity. Asia sees stability. Washington sees a partner slipping away. And now the country is staring over a cliff, unsure whether U.S. retaliation will hit first, or whether Asia's deals will land in time. One gamble has already changed Canada's entire direction, and there's no going back.